This episode was the result of a partnership with YouthBridge Community Foundation through its Think Big for Kids grant. This project by St. Louis story stitchers titled Perception Isn't Always Reality will create a public service announcement campaign as trusted messengers about mental health stigmas.
Come stop and take a trip down on my block where you see hidden potential, young minds sharper than Ginsu, and ain't afraid to speak their mind if they got something against you. We standing with you, we tackle issues like civic pride. Hate will cease to exist, let's put our differences aside. From my side to your side, from Dutchtown to South Side, from Penrose to North Side, from Benton Park to Old North, the West End to West Side. We blessed when we step out, we stand down, rise up, stand together, wise up.
This is StitchCast Studio, produced by St. Louis Story Stitchers in St. Louis, Missouri.
In this week's episode, our StitchCast sits down with Dr. Mati, Director of Health for the City of St. Louis.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches.
You mentioned earlier how when people are brave enough to be transparent about their mental health issues, they are sometimes labeled. What do you, in your experience and the experience of those you work with, what do you believe the common misconceptions of mental health are, and how do you think we can address those effectively?
Yeah, I think it's basic stuff, right? That anyone with a mental health issue, challenge, diagnosis is weaker, unstable, right? And cannot function. That's insane to me, right? We have functioning people who are addicted working amongst us right now, right? But again, why can't a diabetic come to work and be seen as fully functioning and able? And I need to stop picking on diabetics, so I'm going to pick a disease for every example, right? But why can't a person with high blood pressure? Like, we don't do the same thing for those things, right? And of course, I see the nuance, right? It's something that affects maybe the way you are able to operate every day is one thing, but it is known, it is obvious that people, especially who are addressing their mental health diagnoses, just like people who are addressing any other health condition, as long as that thing is under control and is being managed well, should be able to be a functioning member of society like anyone else. I think it is just that perception. It's the stigma that we built around it, right? I'm an HIV specialist as an ID doctor. Anyone will tell you when HIV came to this country in 1985, right? It was labeled this gay disease of death, right? And now we treat it like you can't even date, kiss, touch, you know, back then, I'm sorry, somebody with HIV. And some of that is carried even into 2024. And we know that ain't true. We know that in a very, very, very minuscule, limited definition, can that be even close to being true? But we know in 2024 that anybody who takes an HIV medication, they can take a pill now or even get an IV shot, as long as they are taking it as prescribed. They and have done so for at least 6 months, they can't even pass HIV on to someone, even when they have sex with them, right? That's known now, but a lot of people don't know that, right? So the labels that we give people, to your question around, you know, what are those misconceptions can carry with them. And I think this label around mental health or behavioral health being bad, weak, making you unable to, is just so wrong and so damaging for that reason.
Definitely.
Can I add on to that list of stigmas?
Yeah.
Well, how come with men's mental health, especially with black mental health, why do you guys feel like, I don't know, I've always heard like men having depression or anxiety, it's gay, it's feminine. Why is that? If any of you know.
I mean, it's so ignorant, right? It's just ignorant. I think it's because anyone who is an ignorant, a bigot, a racist, you know, all the ists, right, are going to attach those slurs, what they perceive as slurs, to each other, right? So for racists, for example, being black is bad. So, but if I'm also a bigot, being gay is bad, I'm gonna say most black men, you know, most black people are also gay. Like, that's just, it's such an ignorant association, and saying it out loud doesn't make sense. But if you allow an idea to perpetuate through society enough, these are the ridiculous connections people make, especially in your subconscious if you hear it enough. And this is where children are so susceptible, right? If you are in a household with someone who is deeply embedded in their ignorance and committed to their ignorance, which unfortunately, what I'd like to hope a small portion of society is, then children who are wholly susceptible will just believe these things, right? My daughter goes to school, and a young person, we had an incident last semester where the principal had to email us and say a first grader called another first grader the N-word, right? And
how do you handle
if you know young children, I think the principal, one part of his communication, did a beautiful job of addressing the situation, educating, but also said young children don't come up with these things on their own. Right? And so I don't look at a first grader when they say that. I look at the household, right? The environment that they're in that has empowered a young person at the age of 6 to even feel comfortable saying that word or doing that word. That goes for any slur, right? And so ignorance loves to make these labels. Ignorance loves to make connections where they don't exist. And then those things can perpetuate, and it's even more dangerously so when it starts from our children who don't know any better.
Right.
And those children become adults. Those adults get jobs, leadership positions. That's what makes it so dangerous.
And then have more kids.
There we go. The cycle just keeps repeating itself.
I have a question kind of based off of what both of you guys brought up. I feel like a lot of times when we speak on mental health, it kind of insinuates just a negative vibe inherently. And I think that's funny because everyone has a brain, everyone has health, everyone has a mind. Mental health exists, and it's just like a spectrum if you're doing good that day or bad that day. But I guess I would ask if you agree with either mental health only being used as when things are going wrong, kind of to gauge someone's instability in a sense, or if that we should try to normalize it, or if it would help if we normalize it as just a term overall to gauge, the well-being or the wellness of someone's mind.
Yeah. Language matters. So if I'm understanding your question, right, the moment you try to make a term satisfy everything within it, that's very dangerous. So, right, mental health, it literally is 2 words.
Right.
If you were to look up the definition, the many things that fall under mental health, I'm talking about hundreds of things, right? Within those things, you can pick a subcategory of mental health. It has its own sub-definitions. Within those sub-definitions, there's a range, right? You don't have just one way something that can present. So it's very dangerous. It's easy for this topic. Like, we would never get through this podcast if we tried to account for every little thing that's under mental health. But I think as long as we have an awareness that we're not talking about one thing when we talk about mental health, just like every person's experience with a mental health challenge is that, and just like mental health can be overwhelmingly talking about something positive under that umbrella, something negative under that umbrella, quite frankly something neutral, right? So it's just educating ourselves to understand that while for the ease of a discussion we may just refer to something as mental health, but that in our minds we're very clear on this fact that that has an umbrella. It's the same thing as saying health is one thing, right? Under health there's like hundreds of diagnoses. Each diagnosis has its own very intricate things. That's the reason why I have a whole career, right? I lovingly tell people I went to school for over 30 years after you counted back to back to back to back to be the kind of doctor I am. That's a lot of education, right? You can't sum up that education by just saying health is this one thing that we talk about in this one way. It's very complex. So let's put some respect on mental health as name, right? See what I try to do there? This is why I'm an auntie, y'all. These kind of corny jokes that I try to pull. But it's the complexity of mental health. As long as we understand it and we just don't try to make it this one thing to fit whatever narrative that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? You already know what time it is. Time for another StitchCast Studio Arts Interlude. That's right, it's time to pick the city up. This week, we have a Story Stitch's original song entitled Victor, Not Victim.
Perception.
Your perception.
Yeah.
Always be out of scene.
I could complain, but that ain't really my motto. What often we do what we gotta. To survive, you got too much pride, better swallow. Ain't talk about pills or a bottle. See many people lose purpose all over a bottle. Keeping up with a bravado. Mentally, I'm in a cage. I just want my name to mean something, go give me a bravo. Applause for me, I give all of me, and this art that's deep in my arteries. It's a part of me, and part of me. Outgoing people who stood tall on me ain't as tall as me. Taking care of myself and to sell you and call on me. Same ones who wouldn't take the fall for me, same ones who try to come fall on me. Peel back the layers and see I'm approaching. Keep on battling all these emotions. Thoughts in my mind, y'all ain't got no motion. I'll be alright by this time in the morning. Always to see you ain't pitching me growing. Y'all are not me, and right now it's showing. I went from broke, no heel on the stove, to get off the road and made it a rose.
Your perspective, your perception ain't reality. It's that victor, not victim, that's the mentality. That's how I vibe, and now I walk through this society. Even through all the trials and tests that be trying me.
I've been working on my health though. Nothing wrong with mental health goals. Say the health is where the wealth grow. Call that the mental health flow.
Feel better lens for real. Can you see, can you feel? I'm knowing what feeling to heal. Self-crime in the field.
From mental health to mental wealth. From victim to victor, gon' help myself. From mental health to mental wealth. From victim to victor, gon' help myself.
This world is crazy and wild, like what's going on in my mind? So many doubters, so many haters, that the good ones be hard to find. Some people will just wanna complain. As for myself, I stay on the grind, trying to get out of the dark and work my way into the light and watch as I shine. Lord, please, I pray that you give me some peace. Some folks turning pain to violence, so I keep myself out of the streets. They wanna hold in what they feel, but you gotta release all the heat. Cause everyone got their problems, it's just all about how you receive. And I ain't going out sad though. Straightened up my mental so that I can get this bag, bro. Like keep moving forward, but I can't stay being mad though. Gotta keep my head up, and that's word up to my dad, bro.
Your perspective, your perception ain't reality. It's that victor, not victim, that's the mentality. That's how I vibe, and now I walk through this society. Even through all the trials and tests that be trying me.
I can complain, but that ain't really my thing. Hop back on my feet and get busy. Too many days I showed it the pain that's against me while acting like it ain't no biggie. Feel like my soul be going to trial, feel like my brain be trying to convict me. Court of emotion, my feelings the jury, my heart is the lawyer that's trying to defend me. We make a case for how I shouldn't be in the place that they trying to send me. Willing to wait a while, cause I know it's gonna be a long day if they tell me I'm guilty, whatever the verdict. I feel temptation of falling apart, still I keep it solid. That's how I handle the problems compiling, but let me be honest. Look, they ain't got no award for that. Still worth going to war for that. Still worth taking the pain and the guilt that you married to court and divorcing that. Proud of myself cause I ain't never fold. Picked up a pen, played a beat and I roll. Make sure they know when my story gets told. I put pressure to coal and I glitter like gold.
Your perspective, your perception ain't reality. It's that victor, not victim, that's the mentality. That's how I vibe, and now I walk through this society. Even through all the trials and tests that be trying me.
I've been working on my health though. Nothing wrong with mental health goals. Say the health is where the wealth grow. Call that the mental health flow.
Feel better lens for real. Can you see, can you feel? I'm knowing what feeling to heal. Self-crime in the field.
From mental health to mental wealth. From victim to victor, gon' help myself. From mental health to mental wealth. From victim to victor, gon' help myself. From mental health to mental wealth. From victim to victor, gon' help myself. From mental health to mental wealth. From victim to victor, gon' help myself.
So, in the workplace or even at school, how would you bring up mental health around your coworkers, the people you work with, and how can you make it seem, you know, if someone was dealing with people calling him or her something inappropriate or assuming something about that person and they want to speak on it and to like clarify it, how would they go about that exactly?
That's a really great question. You're talking about self-advocacy. So I would say that there's no school or job that doesn't have a body that is put together to protect the people that come there, right? In the school, there is a handbook, a student handbook. There are principals, vice principals, school counselors whose entire job are to be your advocates in that space, right? In a job, HR, that's what HR's whole job is, right? You should never take a job without really understanding not just your contract, but what they say about some of these things, right? I'm gonna speak now on a personal level. On a personal level, I don't discuss any aspects of my health, whether it's physical or mental, with anybody. I don't owe that to anybody. That's no one's business. If I choose to, then I need to understand that I have chosen to put that out there and that people can choose to say what they want to me in response, right? But if we're just talking about how that impacts like your school journey or your professional journey, most places have standardized rules that say that you cannot be discriminated against your grades, your ability to be there by any parts of your health, physical or mental, right? So if you ever believe that that's happening, you need to find the human being or the groups of human being or the office that is in place to protect that thing. So in the city, that would be the Department of Personnel. At a school, that may be a counselor or a vice principal or someone else, because it's important for you to say, according to your own rules that are in this handbook or in this policy, I cannot be treated unfairly, poorly, or in a way that doesn't reflect the rules that you have, right? And if you don't know how to do that for yourself, which a lot of young people don't, at your age, I didn't know how to do that, then it's about finding mentors at every stage of your journey that can support you. I'm a mentor to quite a few young people. And so what's a mentor? Someone who is experienced, who is an adult in that space, who has your best interest at heart and that you can trust. There are a group of mentors, I call them my A-team, who do know my business, right? Who do know those things. And so when something happens to me, they are my sounding board. They are my safe space, and I can say, hey, this happened to me. I need help figuring out how this relates to the rules, right? If you don't know how to interpret those rules. And even if you do interpret those rules, it can be, there's a power differential between a young person and an adult in any place, whether it's a job, a school, or anywhere else. And there's a lot of those types of differentials if you're from a minoritized community, like being Black, like being from the LGBTQIA plus community, like being from the disabled community, like being from the migrant or immigrant community. And so it's very important, and that's something I teach for you to have a mentor so that they can advocate on your behalf. Because sometimes you either don't feel comfortable or you don't feel empowered, or unfortunately you've seen examples of where there can be negative blowback from you standing up from yourself. So it is important to have a mentor either in those spaces or outside of those spaces who can help you navigate that and speak up on your behalf. So that's a lot of words, but at the end of the day, there are rules and policies and procedures to protect people in all spaces in a civilized society. Okay. And if you are ever in a space where you don't feel comfortable speaking up from yourself, then you should find someone you trust who is a mentor to do so on your behalf. And I'm happy to help whenever you all need it.
Going back to the stigmas and whatnot, so let's say someone has decided to self-advocate and to, come forward about what they're dealing with mentally, or the fact that they don't like their treatment due to what they've disclosed about themselves, or whatever the case may be. How do we encourage empathy in those types of situations when some people's knee-jerk reaction may be to portray a stigma?
We teach it. It's such a basic thing, but when I took over in October of 2021, there hadn't been one training that my staff had received around how to treat people like this. The Department of Personnel at the city does a beautiful job of doing orientation-based trainings that cover some of these things, but I can't have public health workers not receive specialized trainings around trauma-informed care. I am the first health director to provide that type of training across the whole department. We just had it within the last couple of weeks, and we've had multiple trainings, right? And you'll see people on the Zoom or in person rolling their eyes or, not paying attention, but you can't say that we haven't provided you with opportunity. And we try to think about the different places that people learn, like audio, make sure that that training is good from how they hear it, how they see it, providing them with the slides afterwards, refreshing their memories. But empathy is learned. It's learned. And we cannot leave empathy in a professional setting, especially, to be at the mercy of the diverse backgrounds and households that we've come from. That's not appropriate. So if we're serious about strengthening the support for mental health and behavioral health, and if we're serious about seeing empathy grow in our communities, then we need to bring in trained professionals, like I did. I brought the Regional Health Commission, who have an entire section around trauma-informed care, to train my entire department around trauma-informed care, right? And it was a beautiful time, and it was a hard time. It unearthed it triggered some people. It unearthed a lot of pain for some people, right? But at the end of the day, my entire department can say, ooh, we learned the terms around some of these things that we're feeling, but we didn't even know what to call it. We got some tools on how to address this, right? And then we have to accept that empathy needs refresh, like that's an evolving thing. How I learned in medical school about mental and behavioral health looks night and day from what we're dealing with in 2024. So even though I'm a trained doctor, if I'm not committing myself to getting updated trainings on all of health, but specifically this topic we're talking about, then we're not doing what we need to. So there's a lot of answers to that question, but I would prioritize training folks and giving people tools on what it is to be empathetic and how to be empathetic.
Understood.
I was going to ask for people who do finally venture out and seek help and, advocate for themselves. What are things that they can do when they reach out for help and it's kind of turned against them or weaponized or used as a punishment, I guess I could say, in a sense?
Yeah, this goes back to the thing I said about advocacy as well. Please feel free to reach out to my department if you need further advocacy and you don't know where to turn. I'm at the Department of Health in the city of St. Louis. Our phone number is 314-612-5100. Our email is health@stlouis-mo.gov. But it's just really important to get help, right? To get help. So if it's happening in your family, find a safe family member, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, young people's unsafe people are their own parents, right? So is there a cousin, an aunt, a sibling, somebody that is a safe space for you, and you need to go to a trusted person for help? Sometimes the people we trust are in our schools, right? So we need to find a teacher or leader within that school to have this conversation with. You can call us at the health department as well, and we will be more than willing to link you to help where you need it. Like I plugged earlier, and I'm going to shamelessly plug now, we now have the first ever behavioral health bureau for the city of St. Louis. You can call us whenever you need to around that, but definitely ask for help. Once something is out of your control, a lot of times young people and people from minoritized communities feel like you have to unfairly by yourself figure out stuff. Heavy on the ask for help immediately, right? The moment something is beginning to stress you out, you're beginning to panic, you feel overwhelmed, it's time to ask for help. Here at Story Stitchers, you have Brandon, who has been doing this for years, right? Is right here to support you. You have Missy, who is here to help. And they know how to get a hold of me, for example, but I've literally given you the phone number and the email address at the health department, but heavy on the ask for help. One of my biggest ways I've been successful, have grown. I'm one of the youngest people in a lot of the spaces I occupy, even at the ripe old age of 42, is because I'm real good at knowing where my expertise starts, but where it ends. And where it ends, I am big on hiring the best people where I don't have that expertise. And like I said, big on asking for help. But I don't just ask anyone for help. I have had an A team, my mentorship and sponsorship team that has grown with me for well over a decade. I talk to mentors. I have had my own mental health counselors in and out, right? I'm about to go back into counseling. I have my own coach. So I am big on understanding that I need help, and I get that help without apology, and it makes me an even better leader. It makes me a better wife, a better mother, and a better health director. So again, I have normalized for myself that I need help. I get that help, and I know how to ask for that help. But my heart goes out to anybody who's listening to this right now, who's in a situation that feels overwhelming, right? It's time to stop trying to fight alone and to find even one person around you that you know has because sometimes you so down, you can't even pick up the phone to dial 988, or you can't even think about to search in a Google sheet the health department. So find one person who can do that for you, because it's been at my lowest points that somebody else did that for me. And I'm sitting before you today, your health director, because God is good.
Amen. All the time.
All the time.
All right, so do you believe that traditional gender roles impact the way mental health issues are perceived and addressed? And how do we challenge those norms?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I think that society has evolved to finally discuss what we should have known a long time ago, which is that gender roles are not monolithic. They're certainly not dichotomous. They're not just like one thing or two things, right? We need to accept that there is way more within the spectrum there. And we know that is a topic that has been used to negatively affect people in the mental health and behavioral health space as well. And so we need to destigmatize the attacks that come to members of the LGBTQIA plus community, to people that are not cis-identifying as well, and that's important. It's all wrapped up into it, and so it goes back to a question you all asked earlier that really came to the fact that this is not a topic that exists on its own. There's so many topics that feed into it that can either worsen the crisis if we don't deal with them, or will help us to address the crisis if we acknowledge them.
Agreed. And I'll open the floor. Does anybody else want to ask a question? Go ahead.
How do language and media influence the stigma associated with mental health issues?
Yeah. When the media doesn't even commit to addressing this, they hurt the movement, right? When we are closed-minded enough to only talk about these things in one language on certain platforms, we immediately exclude communities that are excluded. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I got in my first month as your health director in 2021 was from the migrant and immigrant community saying, all of your information is in English. You literally exclude the hundreds of different types of cultures and languages represented in the region, right? So shout out to our mayor, Tashara Jones, who has made our website, as much as it's frustrating to use the city's website sometimes, it can immediately be translated into 17 languages. You don't see a lot of websites like that. So even if my social media is limited and I'm only doing English and I do a lot of Hispanic translations and we're trying to grow, we try to now put everything on the website, and people aren't accustomed to going to our website because it can be translated into those 17 languages. So we're making small steps. We've got a couple of grants with the CDC to address language. We're building our budget so that we can address language. But the moment you don't do that, you immediately exclude a whole faction of society so that they're not getting this incredible information. So the work can be overwhelming sometimes. You're like, man, before I do anything, I got to make sure it can be translated to hundreds of languages, can go to every single demographic. And I don't want people to feel that way. Every step matters, and as long as we have leaders that are constantly trying to move us into the direction that we can hit most people. But absolutely, if we are not thinking about the different languages, cultures, and backgrounds that people are from, and being thoughtful about our programming and how we spend our money to make sure that it hits as many of those people as possible, then we are not being as inclusive as we can be.
Do you think movies are starting to do better jobs with portraying mental health issues, movies and shows?
Starting, but not getting there. We're not there yet.
Sure.
Starting, but I'm seeing it. I don't know how you all feel. I'm seeing movies and shows now that have things that would have never been seen back when I was y'all's age, right? We didn't even see representation just for race, let alone the topics around mental and behavioral health, let alone normalizing them. But I think we've got a long way to go. The fact that it was such a big deal in the last midterms that there were people running for really public offices that had known to have certain mental health and behavioral health challenges, whether it be addictions or overt diagnoses, and that was like a new thing that had to be talked about, means that we're still just breaking some of those barriers. So I think we're starting to. I think I'd like to see more. What do you think?
I would agree 100%. We actually do I wouldn't say majority, but we do a healthy amount of podcasts around the mental health. Because just like you were saying earlier, it's such a vast topic. The term mental health doesn't do anything to talk about how complex of a topic and how many subtopics there are and whatnot underneath it. But that being said, each time that we're able to do a mental health podcast, it's nothing like the last one we just did. There are so many different ways you can go about it. That all that to say that when we're researching about mental health, because we want to make sure that we're giving good information and whatnot. So when we're doing the research before the podcast, a lot of times, like I remember one podcast we were doing, I couldn't even find a picture of what a modern mental health facility looks like. There's all the old pictures of like concrete walls and dark rooms and straight jackets and weird wheelchairs that like strap you in and all of that good stuff or whatnot. And so that's what made me think about the movies and shows, because that's all I had seen for a long time.
Couldn't agree with you. Or how do we depict those people in the movies? It's always somebody who is crashing out, who's having a negative experience. Why can't we show someone with a certain diagnosis thriving? Why can't we show? It's the same way some of us react when every movie about a black person has to be like a slave movie or a gang movie or this movie, and we want to keep it real, but we've got to keep it all the way. You know what I mean? Where are stories like Brandon's stories? Where's the Story Stitches story in the media? Where is, or in movies? Where's the Matifadza Hlatshwayo Davis story in these depictions? So we've got a long way to go. And what I've seen as being really helpful is when we stop waiting to be invited to these tables, we build our own tables and we invite who you want. Y'all built this table. You all build Story Stitchers, and you decide who comes to this very seat I'm sitting on. That is powerful. And so I wasn't gassing y'all up at the beginning when I said that I will always make time for y'all. I will always show up for y'all, because not only have I learned from y'all, but I'm in amazement of the table that you've built and how you decide who gets invited. So the more we see Black representation and mental health representation and all the minoritized community representation in the movies, in the media, then our stories diversify. The more we started to see more of those leaders and people writing the scripts and people producing, the more things diversified, right? Watching Issa Rae and folks like her really just come up in the last couple of years, and the shows that are then on HBO, like whether you liked it or not, what Jared Carmichael, I don't know if you've seen his documentary and how it got a lot of, like, it's a really hot topic right now, because he addresses not only like coming out to his family as a Black man, he addresses mental and behavioral health in his family. And when I say social media lost it mostly negative, right? But he still broke a barrier. Maybe we didn't like what we saw, but are we also just accustomed to seeing something that we only frame positive in a certain way? I don't know the answer, but I know I learned a lot more about what normal and how widely divergent normal is by watching Gerard Carmichael's show. I know that, right? And so it's hard. I know as a parent, right? Sometimes I struggle with how much my daughter sees, in 2024, but I also know it's my responsibility to teach her as she goes. So a lot of this trying to, restrict what we see in this day and age is also something we're dealing with in real time. But I want to come back to commending y'all, because you are a part of the movement of diversifying what we see and hear by creating this platform and growing this platform. I could cry at how proud I am of y'all. I wasn't doing anything this powerful at y'all's age,
Thank
it's a blessing.
Thank you. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, everybody under the sound of my voice, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of StitchCast Studio. I'm
going to do my plug.
I bet.
So you can put this wherever you need to in the clip. So I really want people to be aware that the City of St. Louis Department of Health does have the first inaugural Behavioral Health Bureau. We are at 1520 Market Street, room 4034. And you can call us anytime you need help at 314-657-1585. I want to say that we can provide you with free Narcan. We can link you to services. So if you're looking for a counselor, if you're dealing with addiction and you need somebody, we can do that. We have community outreach. We educate people. That coalition I talked about, if you want to be a part of it. And we also have a peer advisory board if you want to be a part of that. That's all under the Behavioral Health Bureau. So one last time, that's 1520 Market Street, room 4034. And you can call us at 314-657-1584. Email us at behavioralhealth@stlouis-mo.gov. So anytime you need help, please contact us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Everybody under the sound of my voice, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of StitchCast Studio. I have been your host, Brandon Lewis. If you're interested in joining StitchCast Studio or joining Story Stitchers in general, and you're in between the ages of 16 and 25, we encourage you to go to storystitches.org. It's absolutely free to sign up. It's completely free to register, and it's free to be in the space. If you feel like you like to be a part of what we're doing, we'd absolutely love to speak with you. We'd love to show you the center. That being said, also, if you're interested in the next place that we're going to be performing, the next event that we have put on, again, we encourage you to go to storystitches.org. You can also find podcast episodes and much, much more. Thank you guys so much for listening. I am signing off.
See you later.
See ya.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Dr. Mati.
Yes.
And we out. Thank you.
You don't got a mic.
This special edition of StitchCast Studio is supported in part by YouthBridge Community Foundation through Think Big for Kids. Story Stitch's creative youth development programs are supported in part by the Lewis Prize for Music's 2021 Accelerator Award. The mission of the Lewis Prize is to partner with leaders who create positive change by investing in young people through music. Additional support for StitchCast Studio and Story Stitch's programs is provided by the Regional Arts Commission, the City of St. Louis Office of Violence Prevention, in partnership with the St. Louis Board of Aldermen through the 2024-2025 programs to reduce crime among at-risk youth, and Tegna Foundation. St. Louis Story Stitcher Studio, the center, is supported in part by Kransberg Arts Foundation, where Story Stitchers is a proud resident organization. Thank you for listening.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them Story Stitchers, Story Stitchers, Story Stitchers, Story Stitchers, Story